What if Harry Potter had made a different choice in those final moments after defeating Voldemort? What if, instead of leaving the Elder Wand in Dumbledore's tomb, he had kept it? What if he had chosen to remain the Master of Death, wielding all three Deathly Hallows together? Today we're exploring an alternate timeline where Harry embraces his destiny as the true master of the three most powerful magical objects in existence. To understand the magnitude of this decision, we need to remember what the Deathly Hallows actually are. The Elder Wand, the most powerful wand ever created, practically unbeatable in a duel. The Resurrection Stone, capable of bringing back shades of the dead, though not truly alive. And the Cloak of Invisibility, a perfect concealment that never fades, passed down through the Potter line for generations. According to the tale of the three brothers, whoever unites all three becomes the Master of Death itself. But what does that really mean? And what happens when someone actually achieves it and chooses to keep that power? In the original timeline, Harry made what many consider the wisest choice. Standing in Dumbledore's office after the Battle of Hogwarts, exhausted and grieving, he chose to break the Elder Wand's power. He would return it to Dumbledore's tomb, hoping that if he died a natural death, the wand's power would be broken forever. He dropped the Resurrection Stone in the Forbidden Forest, never intending to search for it again. He kept only the Cloak of Invisibility, his father's gift, a family heirloom rather than a weapon of power. But what if his decision had been different? What if in that moment Harry had realized that giving up the Elder Wand might not be the safest choice? After all, he had learned that wands could be won without being broken, that ownership could pass through mere disarmament. What if he had thought about all the dark wizards who would come looking for the wand, who would disturb Dumbledore's rest, who might eventually claim it? What if he had decided that the only way to truly protect the world from the Elder Wand was to keep it himself, to be its master until he died of old age, hopefully many decades in the future? Picture that moment. Harry stands in the headmaster's office, the Elder Wand in his hand, Ron and Hermione watching him carefully. The weight of the decision presses down on him. He can feel the wand's power humming through his fingers, responsive in a way his old wand never was. This wand had killed Dumbledore. It had cast Voldemort's Cruciatus curses. It had nearly ended Harry's own life. Every instinct tells him to destroy it, to end its bloody legacy. But then he thinks about Grindelwald's theft, about every dark wizard who had killed for this wand throughout history. He thinks about the empty tomb that anyone could break into. He thinks about his own children, someday in the future, and the world they'll inherit. And he makes a different choice. He tells Ron and Hermione that he's keeping it. Not out of desire for power, but out of responsibility. Someone has to be its guardian, and right now, that someone is him. Hermione would understand immediately, of course. Her brilliant mind would race through the implications, the dangers of the wand falling into the wrong hands, versus the dangers of Harry keeping it. She might argue both sides, playing devil's advocate, but ultimately she would see his logic. The Elder Wand's existence couldn't be erased. Destroying it wouldn't work. Dumbledore had already established that it was likely indestructible by normal means. The only question was who would wield it. Ron's reaction would be more emotional. He'd remember his own struggles with jealousy, the Horcrux's poisonous whispers. He'd worry about what power does to people, even good people. But he'd also trust Harry more than anyone in the world. If anyone could resist the Elder Wand's corruption, it would be the boy who walked willingly to his own death. Ron would crack a joke about Harry collecting the most dangerous magical objects like some people collect chocolate frog cards. And that would break the tension. So Harry keeps the Elder Wand. He already has the cloak, passed down from his father. And the Resurrection Stone, though he dropped it in the forest, he knows exactly where it is. He could retrieve it any time. For the first time in history, one person consciously possesses all three Deathly Hallows, truly earning the title Master of Death. But what does that actually mean? The legend says that whoever unites the three becomes the Master of Death. But death isn't an entity to be commanded despite the children's story. What it really means, as Dumbledore tried to explain, is that the true Master of Death is someone who accepts mortality, who doesn't fear death but doesn't rush toward it either. Someone who understands that death is natural, inevitable, and not something to be conquered but to be accepted. Harry had already proven he understood this when he walked into the forest to face Voldemort. He had accepted his own death without fear, without hesitation. That's what made him the true master. The Hallows themselves were just symbols of that acceptance. the cloak to hide from death when necessary, the stone to accept that death is final and the dead should rest, and the wand to defend life without fearing death in battle. But possessing all three Hallows physically does grant certain advantages. The Elder Wand makes Harry nearly unbeatable in any magical combat. The cloak allows him perfect concealment whenever needed, and the stone, if he chose to retrieve it, could offer counsel from those who died before him, though he'd have to be careful not to abuse that power. The first real test of Harry's decision comes within weeks of the battle. The wizarding world is in chaos, trying to rebuild after Voldemort's reign. The Ministry is reformed under Kingsley Shacklebolt's leadership, but dark wizard sympathizers remain scattered throughout Britain and beyond. And rumors spread quickly. Harry Potter has the Elder Wand, the Death Stick, the Wand of Destiny. Some see him as a hero, the one who defeated the darkest wizard in a century and now holds the most powerful weapon in existence as a guardian. Others see him as dangerous, a young man barely of age wielding power that corrupted Grindelwald and contributed to Dumbledore's downfall. And some, the most dangerous, see him as a target. If they can defeat Harry Potter, the Elder Wand will be theirs. The first attempt comes from a former Death Eater, a man who had escaped Azkaban during the confusion of the battle's aftermath. He tracks Harry to the Burrow, where Harry is staying with the Weasley family, helping them grieve Fred and rebuild their home. The attack happens at night, a barrage of curses through the window of Harry's room. But Harry isn't unprepared. He's kept the Elder Wand close, knowing this might happen. His shield charm, cast with the Elder Wand, doesn't just block the curses, it reflects them with such force that his attacker is unconscious before Harry even leaves his room. The whole confrontation lasts less than 30 seconds. That's the power of the Elder Wand in the hands of its true master. Kingsley himself comes to investigate, and afterward he pulls Harry aside. The conversation is difficult but necessary. Kingsley explains that Harry has painted a target on his back by keeping the wand. Every dark wizard, every power-hungry witch or wizard, every desperate criminal will come for him. Is Harry prepared for that? Is he prepared to spend his life looking over his shoulder, defending himself again and again? Harry's response is simple. They would come anyway. If he had left the wand in Dumbledore's tomb, someone would have stolen it eventually. At least this way, it's in the hands of someone who won't use it for evil, someone who can defend it properly. Kingsley sees the wisdom in this, but he also offers Harry a position as an Auror, protection and purpose combined. Harry accepts, thinking it might be the best way to use his unwanted fame and power for good. His Auror training is complicated by his celebrity and his possession of the Elder Wand. Some instructors are intimidated by him. Others push him harder, trying to prove that he isn't special, that he's just a lucky kid who survived. Harry works twice as hard as everyone else, using his own wand for training whenever possible, keeping the Elder Wand secured unless absolutely necessary. He wants to prove he's not dependent on it, that he's a capable wizard in his own right. Hermione, meanwhile, returns to Hogwarts to complete her 7th year. She's determined to sit her newts properly, to earn her qualifications the right way. Ron joins Harry in Auror training, and the two of them share a flat in London, navigating young adulthood together. Ron never asks to see the Elder Wand, never expresses curiosity about it, and Harry appreciates that more than he can say. It's just another thing they don't need to discuss, like the horrors they witnessed, like the friends they lost. Ginny is back at Hogwarts too, playing Quidditch and trying to have something resembling a normal final year. Her relationship with Harry resumes cautiously. They both know they want to be together, but the distance is difficult, and Harry's new status as the Master of Death casts a shadow over everything. When Ginny comes home for Christmas, she finally asks Harry about the Elder Wand, asks why he really kept it. Harry tells her everything, his fears about it falling into the wrong hands, his sense of responsibility. Ginny listens carefully, then asks the question that cuts to the heart of the matter. Is he keeping it out of responsibility, or is he keeping it because some part of him wants the power, wants to feel safe, wants to never be helpless again? Harry doesn't have an easy answer. Maybe it's both. Maybe that's okay. Ginny kisses him and tells him she trusts him. But she makes him promise to never let the wand change him, to never let it make him into someone who chooses power over love. The months pass, and Harry completes his Auror training with top marks. He's assigned to Kingsley's special task force, hunting down remaining Death Eaters and dark artifacts. The work is dangerous but satisfying. He's good at it, naturally talented at tracking dark wizards and understanding their methods. Having faced Voldemort himself, lesser dark wizards hold little terror for him, but the Elder Wand remains a constant complication. Every dark wizard they capture asks about it, wants to know if the rumors are true. Some try to duel Harry, hoping to win the wand. He defeats them easily, almost effortlessly, which only adds to his legend. The boy who lived has become the wizard who cannot be defeated. It's a reputation that makes his job easier in some ways. Criminals surrendering rather than fighting, but harder in others, with constant challenges and assassination attempts. During one particular mission, Harry and Ron are tracking a dark wizard through the Scottish Highlands when they're ambushed by 3 of the criminal's associates. The fight is brutal and quick. Ron holds his own admirably against one opponent, but Harry faces 2 simultaneously. With the Elder Wand, he could defeat them in seconds, but he's trying not to rely on it, trying to prove he doesn't need it. That hesitation nearly costs him his life. A cutting curse slices across his shoulder, deep and painful. Ron's shout of alarm distracts Harry's opponent for just a moment, and in that moment, Harry draws the Elder Wand. The fight ends instantly. His shield charm is impenetrable, his disarming spell powerful enough to send both wands flying 50 feet away. He subdues both dark wizards with ropes that won't loosen no matter how much they struggle. Afterward, as Hermione heals his shoulder at their flat, she scolds him for his pride. The Elder Wand isn't a crutch, it's a tool. If he's going to keep it, he should use it. Trying to fight without it when his life is in danger is stupid bravado. Harry argues that he doesn't want to become dependent on it, doesn't want to lose his own skills. Hermione points out that Dumbledore used the Elder Wand for decades and remained a brilliant wizard. The wand doesn't diminish your abilities, it enhances them. It's not about dependence, it's about effectiveness. Ron, nursing a fire whiskey, adds that maybe Harry's afraid of what using the wand will turn him into. Harry admits they might both be right. He's terrified of becoming someone who relies on power, who solves everything with force. But he's also terrified of dying stupidly, of leaving Ginny alone, of wasting the second chance at life that so many others didn't get. They make a pact that night. Harry will use the Elder Wand when necessary, when lives are at stake. But for everyday magic, for training, for anything that doesn't require its power, he'll use his regular wand, the one that chose him at 11. Balance. That's what he needs. Balance between the power he holds and the person he wants to be. Time moves forward, as it always does. Ginny graduates from Hogwarts and signs with the Holyhead Harpies as their new seeker. She's brilliant on a broom, fearless and fast. Harry attends every home game he can, cheering from the stands, grateful for something normal and joyful to focus on. Their relationship deepens, becomes something solid and permanent. When Harry proposes, he does it without magic, without wands or fanfare, just the 2 of them on a quiet beach at sunset. They marry young, probably too young by some standards. But after the war, waiting feels pointless. They've both faced death, both lost people they loved. They know that tomorrow isn't guaranteed, so why wait? The wedding is small and private, just family and close friends at the Burrow. Hermione is maid of honor, Ron is best man, and George provides joke wand sparklers that actually work, filling the evening with harmless but spectacular magical fireworks. Harry keeps the Elder Wand locked in a secure vault at Gringotts most of the time now, only carrying it when he's on Auror missions. For everyday life, for his wedding, for building a home with Ginny, he uses his original wand. He wants his marriage to be built on love, not on power or legend. Ginny has never asked to see the Elder Wand, has never shown any curiosity about it. She loves Harry, not the Master of Death. That distinction matters to both of them. The years pass more peacefully than Harry expected. He rises through the Auror ranks, eventually becoming head Auror in his early 30s. Ginny retires from professional Quidditch after a brilliant career, transitioning into sports journalism. They have children, James, Albus, and Lily, and Harry's life becomes wonderfully, beautifully normal for long stretches, but the Elder Wand never stops being a factor. Every few years, someone makes an attempt to take it. A dark wizard ambushes him during a routine investigation. A cursebreaker tries to steal it from the Gringotts vault. A conspiracy of former Death Eater sympathizers plots to kidnap his children to force him to surrender it. Harry defeats every attempt, sometimes easily, sometimes barely, but the threat never fully disappears. The resurrection stone remains in the forbidden forest where he dropped it. Harry thinks about retrieving it sometimes, especially after Teddy Lupin asks about his parents, or when George drinks too much and talks about Fred, or during those dark nights when Harry's own parents feel impossibly distant. But he doesn't. The stone is the most dangerous of the Hallows, the most tempting. The dead should rest. He mastered death when he chose to die, and he mastered it again when he chose to live. He doesn't need the stone to remember the dead or honor them. The cloak of invisibility, however, remains useful. Harry lends it to James when his eldest son starts Hogwarts, with strict instructions not to abuse it. James uses it for pranks, of course, living up to his namesake's legacy. Later, Albus borrows it, and then Lily. The cloak passes through the Potter family, as it always has, a tool for mischief and occasionally protection, but not a weapon of power. When James is 16, he asks his father about the Elder Wand, asks why Harry keeps it locked away. Harry takes his son into his study and talks to him seriously about power, about responsibility, about the difference between having power and using it. He tells James about Dumbledore's mistakes, about Grindelwald's crimes, about every wizard who was corrupted by the Elder Wand's legend. And he tells him about the choice he made to keep it, to be its guardian. James asks if Harry will pass the wand to him someday. Harry's answer is firm. No. The Elder Wand will die with Harry. When Harry dies of natural causes, old and in his own bed hopefully, the wand's power will be broken. No one will master it through him because no one will defeat him. That's the only way to end its curse, to stop the cycle of violence and ambition it inspires. James seems disappointed but accepts his father's wisdom. Albus, quieter and more thoughtful than his brother, asks a different question when his turn comes. He asks if his father ever regrets keeping the wand, if the burden has been worth it. Harry considers this carefully. The truth is complicated. The wand has saved his life dozens of times. It's allowed him to protect people who would have died otherwise. But it's also made him a target, brought danger to his family, forced him to live with constant vigilance. Was it worth it? Harry tells Albus about the alternative, about what might have happened if he'd left the wand in Dumbledore's tomb. Someone would have claimed it eventually, someone far less scrupulous than Harry. That person might have become the next Voldemort, the next Grindelwald. By keeping it, by being its guardian, Harry prevented that. So yes, the burden has been worth it, even if it's been heavy. As head Auror, Harry has access to the Department of Mysteries, and he consults with the Unspeakables about the Hallows when he can. They have theories, old research that Dumbledore contributed to, about what the three objects really are. The most credible theory suggests that the Hallows weren't made by death at all, but by three brilliant wizard brothers who were the most powerful wizards of their age. The objects are real, their power is real, but the mythology around them has been exaggerated by centuries of legend. The Elder Wand is simply a wand of extraordinary power, crafted with techniques lost to time. The Resurrection Stone is a necromantic tool, powerful but limited, bringing back echoes rather than true life. And the cloak is an artifact of such advanced charm work that it has never degraded, unlike normal invisibility cloaks. Together, they represent mastery of three aspects of magic: combat, death, and concealment. Understanding this makes Harry feel less like he's carrying some mystical burden, and more like he's protecting three very dangerous magical artifacts. It's almost refreshing. He's not the master of death in some cosmic sense. He's just a wizard who happens to own three very powerful objects and is trying to keep them out of the wrong hands. In his 40s, Harry finally retrieves the Resurrection Stone from the Forbidden Forest. Not because he wants to use it, but because he realizes it's not safe there. If he could find it, others could too. Some dark wizard or curious student might stumble upon it and unleash its dangerous temptations. He locks it in the vault beside the Elder Wand, three Hallows together again, but separated from the world. Hermione, now Minister for Magic, worries about this concentration of power. She suggests distributing the Hallows, keeping them separate for safety. But Harry argues that splitting them up creates three targets instead of one. As long as he's alive and guarding them, they're safer together. When he dies, the Elder Wand's power will break, and his children can decide what to do with the stone and cloak. Hermione reluctantly accepts his reasoning, but makes him promise to update his will with explicit instructions about the Hallows. Ron, running Weasley's Wizard Wheezes with George, takes a simpler view. He's just glad Harry is still alive and relatively sane. He's seen too many good people corrupted by power. But Harry has remained Harry, still the same awkward, brave, occasionally stupid friend Ron grew up with. If Harry has managed to keep the Elder Wand for decades without turning evil, Ron figures he can manage it for a few more decades until old age claims him. The question of what Harry will do with the Hallows when he's dying becomes more pressing as he ages. He's in his 50s now, graying at the temples, slower on his feet but still formidable. He's faced death before, and he's not afraid of it, but he wants to ensure the Hallows are handled properly. He updates his will multiple times, each version more detailed than the last. The Elder Wand is to be buried with him, or if that's not possible, broken and scattered. The resurrection stone should be thrown into the deepest part of the ocean, somewhere it can never be recovered. The cloak goes to his children, the only Hallow safe enough to pass down, but Harry's careful planning doesn't account for everything. At 55, he faces a crisis that will test everything he believes about the Hallows and his role as their guardian. A new threat emerges, not from Britain, but from the international wizarding community. A consortium of dark wizards from across Europe and Asia has formed, calling themselves the Lords of Ascension. They're not a single dark lord, but a council of powerful witches and wizards who believe that magical power should be concentrated in the hands of the worthy. And they've identified the Deathly Hallows as the key to their vision. Their plan is sophisticated and terrifying. Rather than simply trying to kill Harry and take the Elder Wand, which dozens have tried and failed to do, they've studied the lore of the Hallows extensively. They know that the Elder Wand passes through defeat, that the stone lies in Harry's vault, that the cloak belongs to the Potter family, and they've developed a strategy that doesn't rely on defeating Harry in a duel. They begin by targeting Harry's family, not to kill them, but to force Harry into impossible choices. James, now an Auror himself, is ambushed during a mission in Romania. He's captured, held hostage, and the demands are simple. Harry must bring the Elder Wand to a specified location, alone, or James dies. No Auror backup, no ministry intervention, just Harry and the wand. It's a trap, obviously. Harry knows it's a trap. But it's also his son, his firstborn, the boy he taught to fly a broomstick and helped through nightmares about the war stories he'd heard growing up. Hermione, as minister, forbids him from going. It's too dangerous, and giving the Elder Wand to dark wizards would be catastrophic. She promises to mobilize every Auror in Britain to find James, to rescue him properly. But Harry knows his son might not survive a rescue attempt. These aren't amateurs holding James. They're powerful dark wizards who have planned this carefully, and he can't bear the thought of losing his child because he was too afraid to take a risk. Ginny understands. She always understands. She tells Harry that whatever he decides, she supports him, but she also reminds him that James knew the risks when he became an Auror. He wouldn't want his father to compromise the entire wizarding world's safety for him. Harry spends a sleepless night wrestling with the decision. He stands in his study, holding the Elder Wand, feeling its power pulse through his fingers. He thinks about all the times it saved his life, all the dark wizards he stopped with it. He thinks about the burden he's carried for decades, the responsibility of keeping this weapon out of the wrong hands. And he thinks about James, bound and threatened somewhere in the darkness. In the end, Harry makes a choice that surprises everyone, including himself. He doesn't go to the meeting alone. He doesn't bring the Elder Wand. Instead, he brings something he's kept hidden for decades, something he retrieved from the Forbidden Forest years ago but has never used. He brings the Resurrection Stone. He meets the Lords of Ascension at the specified location, an abandoned castle in the Scottish Highlands. There are 5 of them, masked and powerful, radiating confidence. They're surprised when Harry arrives without the Elder Wand, and their leader, a witch with a cold, precise voice, immediately threatens to kill James unless Harry produces it. Harry's response is calm. He tells them he brought something better than the Elder Wand. He shows them the Resurrection Stone, explains what it is, what it can do, the ability to speak with the dead, to gain their knowledge, their wisdom. For dark wizards seeking power, the stone represents something the Elder Wand cannot provide, the accumulated knowledge of every powerful wizard who ever died. It's a gamble, and for a moment Harry thinks it won't work. But then the leader steps forward, interested. She wants to know if it really works, if Harry can prove its power. Harry takes a breath and turns the stone in his hand 3 times. And they appear, as they did once before in the Forbidden Forest. His parents, Lily and James Potter, Sirius, Remus, the shades of those he loved most, translucent and sad, but present. The Lords of Ascension are stunned. They've never seen anything like this, the dead walking among the living, even as echoes. Harry makes his offer. He'll trade the resurrection stone for James right now, no tricks. The stone for his son. They can attempt to find the Elder Wand on their own, but they'll have the stone immediately, and he'll even teach them how to use it properly. The leader considers this. The stone is valuable, perhaps more valuable than the wand for their purposes. Knowledge is power, after all, and the ability to consult with the greatest dark wizards in history would give them an unprecedented advantage. She agrees to the trade. James is released, injured but alive, and Harry hands over the resurrection stone. As the Lords of Ascension examine their prize, Harry embraces his son, checking his injuries with shaking hands. And then, as James is port-keyed to safety by Aurors, who Harry had positioned nearby despite his promise to come alone, Harry reveals his final trick. The resurrection stone doesn't work for just anyone. It only responds to those who have truly accepted death, who understand what it means to be mortal. For dark wizards seeking power, seeking to avoid death, the stone is useless. It won't turn for them. It won't show them anything but their own fear. The leader realizes the deception too late. She tries to use the stone, turning it in her hand, but nothing happens. No shades appear, no wisdom from the dead. It's just a stone, inert and powerless in her hands. Her rage is immediate, and she strikes at Harry with a curse that would have killed him instantly. But Harry had prepared for this too. He may not have brought the Elder Wand, but he brought something else. A dozen Aurors under invisibility cloaks, surrounding the castle, waiting for his signal. The moment the curse is fired, they reveal themselves, shields blazing. The fight that follows is intense but brief. The Lords of Ascension are powerful, but they're outnumbered and caught off guard. Within minutes, all five are captured, bound with magic that not even they can break. Harry retrieves the resurrection stone from where it fell during the fight. He looks at it for a long moment, this small piece of rock that has caused so much suffering throughout history. Then he does something he should have done years ago. He channels magic through the stone, a technique the Unspeakables taught him for dealing with indestructible artifacts. He doesn't destroy it, that's probably impossible, but he seals it, locks its power away permanently. When he's done, the stone is nothing but a black rock, all its necromantic power contained and dormant. He keeps it sealed in his vault afterward, alongside the Elder Wand, but now it's truly harmless. No one will ever use the resurrection stone again. Not him, not dark wizards, not curious researchers. Its power to blur the line between life and death is ended. James recovers from his ordeal, though the experience leaves him shaken. He tells his father that he never expected to be rescued, that he'd made peace with dying because he knew Harry wouldn't trade the Elder Wand for him. Learning that Harry found another way, that he risked everything to save James without compromising the wand's security, affects James deeply. He understands now, in a way he never did before, the impossible balance his father has maintained for decades. The incident with the Lords of Ascension sends shockwaves through the international wizarding community. The fact that a coordinated group of dark wizards nearly obtained the Hallows terrifies the International Confederation of Wizards. They demand that Harry surrender the remaining Hallows to international protection, arguing that no single wizard, no matter how trustworthy, should hold such power. Harry refuses. He points out that the resurrection stone is now sealed and harmless, that the cloak is a family heirloom with no dark purpose, and that the Elder Wand has been safe in his custody for over 3 decades. Surrendering them to an international body would just create a new target, a vault full of powerful artifacts that dark wizards would inevitably try to steal. Better to keep them scattered and hidden, with the Elder Wand in the hands of someone who has proven he won't abuse it. Hermione supports Harry publicly, though privately she admits to Ginny that she worries constantly about the stress this puts on him. Every year that passes, Harry looks a little more tired, a little more worn. The burden of guardianship is aging him faster than it should. He's only in his mid-50s, but he moves like a man 10 years older, the accumulated toll of decades of vigilance and combat taking its price. Ginny sees it too, and it breaks her heart. The man she fell in love with, brave and kind and sometimes stupidly reckless, has become cautious and calculating, always aware of threats, always planning for the next attack. He still smiles, still laughs with their children and grandchildren, but there's a weight behind his eyes that never fully lifts. She wishes, not for the first time, that he had left the Elder Wand in Dumbledore's tomb all those years ago. But she also knows why he didn't, and she can't fault him for the choice he made with the best intentions. Harry's 60th birthday is celebrated at the Burrow. 3 generations of Weasleys and Potters gathered to honor the man who saved the wizarding world twice. Once from Voldemort, and once from the slow corruption of the Deathly Hallows falling into the wrong hands. Harry sits at the head of the table, Ginny beside him, and watches his family with deep contentment. This is what he fought for, what he carried the burden for. These people safe and happy and alive, but even this moment of peace is interrupted. An emergency Patronus from the Ministry arrives, urgent and frantic. There's been a break-in at Gringotts. Someone has penetrated the wards around Harry's vault. The one containing the Elder Wand and the sealed Resurrection Stone. The goblins fought them off. But 3 goblins are dead and the attackers escaped. They didn't get the Hallows, but they came terrifyingly close. Harry leaves immediately, returning to Gringotts to assess the damage. The vault is intact, the Hallows untouched. But the attempt proves what Harry has feared for years. He can't protect the Hallows forever. Sooner or later, someone will find a way past all his protections, all his safeguards. The only permanent solution is to ensure the Hallows can never be used again. He's already sealed the Resurrection Stone. The cloak he'll never give up. It's his family's legacy and relatively harmless. But the Elder Wand, the root of so much violence and ambition, that's the problem. As long as it exists in its current form, it will always be a target. Harry can't destroy it, but he can do something almost as final. He consults with the most knowledgeable wand makers in Britain and abroad, with the unspeakables, with anyone who might have insight into the Elder Wand's construction. After months of research, he learns something crucial. The Elder Wand's power doesn't come solely from its physical materials, from the Elderwood and Thestral Tail hair core. It comes from the intention woven into its creation, from the magic binding those materials together, and from the line of masters who have wielded it over centuries. There's a ritual, ancient and dangerous, that can sever a wand's allegiance to its line of masters. It doesn't destroy the wand physically, but it breaks the magical bond that allows it to recognize a master, that allows its allegiance to pass through defeat. After the ritual, the Elder Wand would be just a very powerful wand, but not the unbeatable wand. It would choose a new master like any other wand, rather than being won through violence. Harry decides this is the answer. On the night of the winter solstice, in the Department of Mysteries under the supervision of the Unspeakables, Harry performs the ritual. It requires him to duel 3 other wizards while holding the Elder Wand, to be defeated 3 times, to willingly surrender the wand's allegiance. It's agonizing, fighting to lose while every instinct screams at him to win, but he does it. 3 times he falls, 3 times he surrenders, and with the 3rd defeat, something in the wand's magic breaks. The Elder Wand is still a powerful artifact, still made of Elderwood and Thestral hair, still capable of extraordinary magic, but it's no longer the Death Stick. Its allegiance can no longer be won through combat. It will choose its master based on affinity and compatibility like any other wand. The blood-soaked legacy of the Elder Wand, centuries of murder and betrayal, is finally ended. Harry locks the transformed wand back in his vault, but now he sleeps easier. The wand is no longer worth killing for. Oh, dark wizards might still want it for its power, but it won't be the same all-consuming obsession. It's just a wand now, a very good wand, but not the symbol of absolute magical dominance it once was. The years that follow are the most peaceful of Harry's adult life. With the Elder Wand's curse broken and the Resurrection Stone sealed, the Hallows cease to be the target they once were. Attacks on Harry's family stop. The constant vigilance that has defined his life for decades finally eases. He retires from the Auror office at 65, ready to spend his remaining years with Ginny, watching his grandchildren grow up, finally free from the burden that has defined so much of his adult life. But Harry Potter's story isn't finished yet. At 67, a full 5 decades after the Battle of Hogwarts, something unexpected happens. A young witch named Elena Corvus, a researcher specializing in ancient magical artifacts, comes to Harry with a discovery that changes everything he thought he knew about the Deathly Hallows. She's found records in the restricted section of a library in Prague, manuscripts that predate the tale of the 3 brothers by centuries. According to these documents, the 3 Hallows weren't created by 3 brothers at all. They were made by a single witch, a woman known only as the Wand Maker who lived in the 10th century. She was the greatest magical artificer of her age, and she created the three objects as a set, designed to be wielded together by a single individual. But not for the purpose everyone assumed. The Hallows weren't meant to make someone the master of death in the sense of conquering or controlling it. They were meant to be used by someone facing certain death, someone with a terminal illness or a fatal curse, to give them time to set their affairs in order, to say goodbye to loved ones, to pass on knowledge that would otherwise be lost. The Elder Wand to defend themselves during their final days, the Cloak to move unseen and avoid conflict, and the Stone to speak with those who had died before them, to gain wisdom about accepting death. The Wand Maker created them for her own use, knowing she was dying from a magical plague that had no cure. She used the Hallows for their intended purpose, then scattered them before her death, hoping they would help others facing the same peaceful acceptance of mortality. But over the centuries, the object's true purpose was forgotten, twisted into legends of power and conquest. The Master of Death wasn't meant to be someone who defeated death, but someone who faced it with grace and wisdom. This revelation stuns Harry. He spent 50 years as the guardian of objects he fundamentally misunderstood. He broke the Elder Wand's curse, sealed the Resurrection Stone, but he never truly grasped what they were meant to be. They weren't weapons of power. They were tools for dying well. Elena suggests that Harry, as the one who united all three Hallows, should write the true history, should ensure that future generations understand what the objects really represented. Harry agrees, and he begins work on a comprehensive account of the Deathly Hallows, their true origin, their corruption by legend, and his own 5-decade journey as their guardian. The process of writing forces Harry to confront things he's avoided thinking about for years. The cost of his decision to keep the Elder Wand, the attacks his family endured because of him, the years of fear and vigilance that stole so much joy from his life, but also the lives he saved by keeping the wand out of Dark Wizard's hands. The knowledge that his burden prevented another Dark Lord from rising. The fact that his children and grandchildren grew up in a world made safer by his sacrifice. As Harry writes, he realizes something profound. He did become the Master of Death, but not in any way the legends described. He mastered death by accepting it when he walked into the Forbidden Forest. He mastered it again by choosing to live, to carry a burden that made his life harder but protected others. And he'll master it one final time when his own death comes, whenever that may be, by facing it without fear, having lived a full life in service to something greater than himself. The manuscript takes 2 years to complete. It's exhaustive, covering everything from the Hallows' creation to Harry's decision to break the Elder Wand's curse. He includes the painful parts, the times he made mistakes, the moments he doubted his choices. Hermione helps him edit it, ensuring historical accuracy. Ron provides commentary on the parts he witnessed personally, adding perspective Harry sometimes lacked. When the book is published, it becomes an instant classic in magical historical literature. It's read in schools, studied by researchers, discussed in academic circles around the world, but more importantly, it changes how people think about power and death. The idea that the Deathly Hallows were meant to help people die well, rather than avoid death entirely, resonates deeply with readers. Harry receives thousands of letters from witches and wizards who tell him how the book helped them face their own mortality or the deaths of loved ones. He never expected this, that his account of guardianship and burden would become a meditation on accepting death as a natural part of life. But perhaps it makes sense. After all, that's what the Hallows were always meant to teach. At 70, Harry faces his first serious health crisis. A curse he took decades ago during an Auror mission, one that was supposedly healed, resurfaces with complications. The healers at St. Mungo's do what they can, but they're honest with him. He has perhaps 5 years, maybe less. The curse has damaged his heart irreparably, and while they can manage the symptoms, they can't cure it. Harry takes the news with remarkable calm. He's faced death before, multiple times. This is just another version of it, slower perhaps, but no less certain. He tells Ginny that evening, and they sit together in their garden, holding hands, watching the sunset. She cries, and he comforts her, promising that they'll make the most of whatever time remains. They do exactly that. Harry steps back from most of his remaining public obligations, focusing entirely on family. He spends long afternoons with his grandchildren, teaching them magic, telling them stories, making memories that will last long after he's gone. He takes Ginny on trips to places they always meant to visit but never found time for. He reconciles with old rivals, makes peace with regrets, lives fully in each remaining day. During this time, Harry makes a decision about the Hallows. The transformed Elder Wand, still powerful but no longer cursed, he bequeaths to the Ministry to be displayed in a museum, behind powerful wards, as a historical artifact. Let people see it, learn from it, understand what it represented. It's no longer dangerous, no longer worth killing for. The sealed resurrection stone he instructs to be buried with him. It's harmless now, its power contained, but he doesn't want it falling into hands that might try to break the seal. Let it rest with him, a reminder of the price of trying to reverse death. The cloak of invisibility goes to Albus, his middle child, who Harry believes will appreciate its history and use it wisely. Not James, who is too much like Harry himself, too likely to take unnecessary risks. Not Lily, who is too famous in her own right as a healer and wouldn't benefit from invisibility. Albus, quiet and thoughtful, will treasure it as the family heirloom it was always meant to be. In his final year, Harry becomes reflective, philosophical in a way he never was before. He thinks about the path his life took, all because he made one different choice in Dumbledore's office so many decades ago. Keeping the Elder Wand changed everything. It made his life harder, more dangerous, more stressful, but it also made the world safer. That's the truth he's finally comfortable accepting. He wasn't wrong to keep the wand, despite the cost. He wasn't right either. It was simply a choice, made with imperfect information, that had consequences both good and bad. He did his best to handle those consequences honorably, and while he made mistakes along the way, he never betrayed the principles that made him keep the wand in the first place. He protected people. He refused to abuse power. He remained, fundamentally, Harry Potter. One autumn evening, with his family gathered around him in his study, Harry tells them about his first encounter with death. Not when he faced Voldemort in the forest, but much earlier, when he watched his mother die to protect him. He has no memory of it, but he's always felt the weight of that sacrifice. The knowledge that his life was bought with hers. He tells them that every choice he made afterward, keeping the Elder Wand, bearing the burden of guardianship, fighting to protect others, all of it was his way of honoring that sacrifice. His mother gave her life so he could live. The least he could do was make that life meaningful, make it count for something, even if it was hard, even if it hurt. James, Albus, and Lily listen with tears in their eyes. They've heard stories about their grandmother their whole lives, but hearing their father speak of her now, at the end of his own life, gives those stories new weight. They understand now what drove him, what made him capable of carrying burdens that would have broken others. As winter approaches, Harry's health declines more rapidly. He's tired, his magic feels thin and distant, and he knows his time is measured in weeks now, not months. He says his goodbyes to old friends, to Neville and Luna, to the surviving members of the Order of the Phoenix, to colleagues from the Auror office. Each goodbye is bittersweet, but Harry faces them with grace. Ron and Hermione visit every day during those final weeks. The Golden Trio, together until the end. They talk about Hogwarts, about their adventures, about the war and everything that came after. Ron makes Harry laugh with stories about the shop, about the ridiculous products he and George have invented over the years. Hermione holds Harry's hand and tells him how proud she is of him, how he exceeded every expectation, how he proved that power doesn't corrupt if the person wielding it has a strong enough moral compass. Harry tells them both that he couldn't have done any of it without them. The Elder Wand made him powerful, but they made him good. They kept him grounded, kept him human, kept him from becoming the kind of person who relied on power instead of friendship. Whatever he achieved, they achieved together. On a cold December night, as snow falls softly outside his window, Harry Potter dies. Ginny is beside him, holding his hand, and their children are gathered around his bed. His last words are simple. He tells Ginny he loves her, tells his children to take care of each other. And then, with a peaceful expression, he closes his eyes for the last time. The funeral is enormous, attended by what seems like every witch and wizard in Britain. The Minister for Magic gives a speech about Harry's service to the wizarding world. The Chief Warlock of the Wizengamot talks about his dedication to justice. The headmistress of Hogwarts speaks of his bravery and sacrifice. But the most moving eulogy comes from Ron, who ignores his prepared remarks and instead simply tells stories about his best friend. About the boy he met on the Hogwarts Express who turned out to be the bravest, most loyal, most frustratingly noble person Ron ever knew. Harry is buried in Godric's Hollow, next to his parents. The sealed resurrection stone is placed in his coffin as he requested. The transformed Elder Wand is installed in the Ministry's museum within the week, displayed with a plaque explaining its history and Harry's role in breaking its curse, and the cloak of invisibility passes to Albus, who folds it carefully and stores it in a trunk, knowing he'll treasure it always as a piece of his father's legacy. In the years that follow, historians and writers analyze Harry Potter's decision to keep the Deathly Hallows. Some argue he made the right choice, that his guardianship prevented catastrophe. Others suggest he should have destroyed or hidden the objects differently. But most come to understand that there was no perfect answer, no obviously correct path. Harry made a choice based on the information he had and the person he was, and then he lived with the consequences as honorably as he could. What cannot be argued is the impact of his decision. In the 50 years that Harry guarded the Elder Wand, it killed no one. In 1,000 years before that, it left a trail of blood and betrayal. That alone justifies his choice. By keeping the wand, by refusing to abuse it, by eventually breaking its curse, Harry ended a cycle of violence that had persisted for centuries. The Deathly Hallows, as objects of power and legend, died with Harry Potter. The transformed wand sits in a museum, studied but not feared. The sealed stone rests in a grave, its necromantic power forever contained. The cloak remains with the Potter family, a useful tool but no longer one-third of a set that symbolized dominance over death. Harry's book about the Hallows becomes required reading at Hogwarts, taught alongside the tale of the three brothers as a corrective, showing students what happens when legend is mistaken for truth, when power is pursued without understanding, when death is seen as something to be conquered rather than accepted. Young witches and wizards grow up learning about Harry Potter not just as the boy who lived or the chosen one, but as the master of death who mastered it by accepting it. They learn that true power isn't about defeating others or accumulating magical artifacts. It's about making difficult choices, bearing burdens without complaint, and remaining true to your principles even when it would be easier to compromise them. Teddy Lupin, who Harry helped raise and who became an Auror like his father, often speaks at Hogwarts about his godfather. He tells students that Harry never wanted to be the master of death, never sought the Hallows for power, never desired the burden he carried for 50 years. But when circumstances thrust that burden upon him, he carried it without self-pity, without arrogance, with nothing but a stubborn determination to do what was right. That, Teddy tells students, is what made Harry Potter truly extraordinary. Not his survival of the killing curse, not his defeat of Voldemort, not even his guardianship of the Deathly Hallows. It was his unwavering commitment to protecting others, even at great personal cost. It was his refusal to let power corrupt him. It was his acceptance that some burdens must be borne simply because there's no one else willing or able to bear them. The wizarding world Harry left behind is safer, wiser, and more thoughtful about power because of the choices he made. Dark wizards still exist, evil still threatens, but the cycle of violence surrounding the Deathly Hallows is broken. Future generations won't face the temptation Harry faced, won't have to make the choice he made, because he made it for them and lived with the consequences so they wouldn't have to. In a sense, Harry's decision to keep the Hallows was his final sacrifice. He gave up peace, safety, and ease to ensure that the most dangerous magical artifacts in existence remained out of the wrong hands. He spent 50 years as a target, as a guardian, as the master of death, so that when he died, death could finally stop being something to master. And perhaps that's the truest measure of his success. He united the Deathly Hallows, wielded them, understood them, and then rendered them harmless. The Elder Wand's curse is broken. The Resurrection Stone's power is sealed. The Cloak of Invisibility is just a family heirloom. The Master of Death dismantled death's mastery, not through force or magic, but through patience, wisdom, and sacrifice. Harry Potter didn't conquer death. He didn't defeat it or trick it or bargain with it. He simply looked death in the eye, as he did in the Forbidden Forest all those years ago, and said he wasn't afraid. Then he lived his life accordingly, making choices that honored that fearlessness, bearing burdens that others couldn't bear, and finally accepting death when it came for him naturally, peacefully. having completed the work he set out to do. That's what it means to be the Master of Death. Not immortality, not invincibility, not power over others, just the courage to face mortality honestly, the strength to carry difficult burdens, and the wisdom to know that some things are more important than survival. Harry Potter embodied all of that, and in doing so, he transformed the Deathly Hallows from symbols of power into symbols of sacrifice. The story of Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows. The true story isn't about a boy who cheated death. It's about a man who understood death better than anyone, who carried that understanding like a burden for 50 years, and who finally laid that burden down, having changed the world for the better. It's a story about responsibility, about the weight of power, about the price of protection. And it's a story that resonates because it speaks to something universal. We all face choices about power and responsibility. We all must decide what we're willing to sacrifice for others. We all must eventually face our own mortality and decide what kind of life we want to live in the meantime. Harry Potter made his choices, lived with them, and showed future generations what it looks like to bear impossible burdens with grace. So what if Harry had become the Master of Death and kept the Hallows? He would have lived a harder life, but a meaningful one. He would have sacrificed peace for purpose, ease for duty, personal happiness for the greater good. He would have died younger than he should have, worn down by decades of vigilance. But he also would have prevented immeasurable suffering, protected countless lives, and finally broken the curse that had made the Deathly Hallows dangerous for 1,000 years. It wouldn't have been an easy path, but it would have been a worthy one. And in the end, Harry Potter always chose the worthy path, even when it was hard, even when it hurt, even when no one would have blamed him for choosing differently. That's what made him a hero, not his survival or his power, but his choices. And if he had chosen to keep the Hallows, he would have made that choice heroically too, bearing the burden with the same stubborn courage he brought to every other challenge in his extraordinary life. The Master of Death lived and died on his own terms, having mastered not death itself, but his relationship with it. He faced it without fear, lived knowing it was inevitable, and when it came, he welcomed it as an old friend. That's the lesson of the Deathly Hallows, the one it took Harry 50 years to fully understand and teach to others. Death isn't the enemy, fear of death is, and the only way to master that fear is to accept death as natural, inevitable, and nothing to be ashamed of or to run from. Harry Potter did that better than anyone. He walked willingly to his own death to save others. He kept the Hallows not to avoid death, but to protect life. And he died having lived fully, loved deeply, and made the world better through his choices. That's the true power of the Master of Death, and it's a power anyone can claim, with or without magical artifacts, simply by choosing to live courageously and die without regret. Harry showed us how, and his example will inspire generations to come, long after the Deathly Hallows themselves have faded into history and legend once more.